General Hospital spoilers and updates for the week of Monday, July 21st through Friday, July 25th include exposés, threats, and promises. Portia Robinson is not holding back in her exposé of Drew Kane. Curtis Ashford threatens betrayal of a friend, and Nina Reeves pledges action. Exposes Portia does not hold back. At the hospital, a tearful Portia doesn't hold back from revealing Drew to Willow Tate. Drew has been blackmailing Portia, and his latest threat to destroy her career and family is the final straw. This time he wants her to falsify Michael Corinthos' medical documents to prove he is on drugs. Drew wants to show Michael is an inadequate parent to Wiley and Amelia Corinthos. Willow's face gets angry as Portia yells, "You have no idea who your fiancé truly is." Curtis threatens betrayal. It appears Willow is in a chamber used by the church to prepare brides for their nuptials, as she sits at a dressing table with a mirror and has a peculiar look in her eyes. Curtis bursts into the room, determined not to let this wedding go as well. He exclaims, "I'm going to battle to save you, even if it means betraying a friend." There's a shot of Willow looking teary and perplexed at Drew, most likely because she believes Curtis is talking about Drew. Even Curtis can sense Willow is not herself, and the person he's referring to is her mother, Nina. He knows things Willow doesn't, and Nina is afraid to reveal. The scenario continues with Willow doing makeup at the dressing table. Nina promises action. Nina promises action as she speaks with Ava Jerome ahead of the ceremony. Ava will be rattled. Nina is furious, and she tells Ava that as Willow's mother, she cannot stand by and allow this happen any longer. Ava is aware of Nina's affair with Drew, which occurred at the same time that Drew began to pursue Willow, despite the fact that it was hate sex. Ava even proposed talking honest to Willow about it, but Nina is frightened of losing her daughter again if she does. Will Curtis beat her to the punch and reveal it at the wedding? The drama-filled wedding begins with Lucy Coe as the officiant and Drew stood waiting for his wife. It is not a large wedding, and there are no Corinthos or Spencer family there. Nina and Liesl Albrecht are on the left front row, while Alexis Davis is on the right front row. Rick Lansing is in the second row on the left, with Ava beside him. Martin Gray and Kai Taylor are to his right. Drew beams with pride as Emily Scout Kane walks from the back as the flower girl. The issue is, who will halt the wedding and how? General Hospital spoilers and updates hint that Curtis Ashford could be the one to drop the bomb that ends his and Nina Reeves' friendship forever. Curtis mentioned in a recent conversation that sometimes people have to betray friends, implying that it is for the greater good. Curtis is fighting Drew Kane on multiple fronts, including assisting Michael Corinthos and protecting Portia Robinson. Everyone agrees that Drew is no longer the brave man and devoted father he was before being presumed dead some years ago. Drew is a liar, a manipulator, and in Willow Tate's case, a Svengali. Willow appears to be completely under Drew's influence, unconcerned about the devastation he has caused in her life and marriage to Michael. True, it takes two to tangle, but Willow appears to have been captivated. Nina needs as many allies and weapons as she can get against Drew. The one thing Nina hasn't done that could turn Willow against Drew may cost her Willow even if it was over soon. It was more of an enemies with benefits situation than a love affair, and it began as hate sex mostly in one of their offices. But the flirtation with Drew marginally overlapped Drew's pursuit of Willow, and that tiny overlap may be disastrous, even though Willow was married to Michael at the time. Willow's flirting may have begun as tough to reject, but Drew's persistence was clearly compulsive. The more Nina thinks about it, the more she realizes Willow and Drew are both enamored with each other, with Drew even competing with Michael. And what kind of bomb would that be? Back to Curtis and the bomb he could detonate that would forever alter his and Nina's friendship, and possibly cost Nina her daughter, or perhaps not. Maybe she'd simply dump Drew. Willow and Drew are rushing into things because Michael has taken sole custody of Wiley and Amelia Corinthos. They're being married at the end of the week, and Nina is scrambling to prepare a lavish wedding for her daughter, despite her objections to her daughter marrying the evil Drew. Nina has another weapon in her arsenal now that Liesl Albrecht has returned, but the bomb Curtis could drop could be far more effective. Not only will it hopefully persuade Willow that Drew is a snake, but it may also persuade his constituents. Will Curtis drop the bombshell that Drew is playing a daughter against her mother? General Hospital spoilers for the next 2 weeks indicate twists and surprises. From July 21st to August 1st, Jen Sidwell is expected to make a major announcement. Fans will learn more about Britt Westbourne's story. Willow Tate's life comes crumbling down on her wedding day. Portia Robinson encouraged. Before we get into the two-weekers, let's talk about what's going on July 21st to 25th. Isaiah Gannon offers Portia Robinson some encouragement. Isaiah has a good moral compass, so he will probably push Portia to do the right thing. It would, at the very least, end Drew Kane's control over Portia, even if it meant prison time. Laura Collins makes a disturbing discovery. This could indicate that Sonny Corinthos has kidnapped Marco Rios. Meanwhile, Sidwell makes a surprising announcement. That could refer to Sonny's demands. Sidwell may give in to his adversary for the time being, but once Marco is safe, the villain will retaliate. Tracy Quartermaine also gets some updates from Martin Gray. Willow Tate's wedding woes. Willow and Drew's wedding day is quickly approaching. Liesl Orbrecht warned Nina Reeves after she noticed Willow's sneer. Liesl stated that Willow has a serious problem. Then she determined to end Willow and Drew's relationship. That could explain why Willow and Drew's wedding day was so dramatic. Liesl will also catch up with Elizabeth Liz Baldwin. There's also Jason, who will pursue a woman who looks exactly like Britt. Jason's fate will be determined later this week. So it appears that Jason may search for the woman even if he is unable to board her plane. Dante Falconeri and Lulu Spencer are in a panic. It could be Rocco Falconeri reaching out to Liesl. General Hospital Weekly spoilers. Willow's wedding day arrives and chaos abounds. Lucy Coe has an invitation for someone. Ava Jerome becomes rattled. General Hospital spoilers. Next 2 weeks during the week of July 28th, viewers will witness the fallout of Drew and Willow's failed wedding. It may cause Willow to snap even further. Meanwhile, Sidwell and Sonny should engage in additional revenge and attacks. Nobody is off limits, and no one is safe, so stay tuned. Tension boiled beneath the surface as guests came, dressed to the nines and eager to celebrate what should have been the happiest day of two people's lives. The grand ballroom had been transformed into a romantic haven, with white roses lining the aisle, candles illuminating every corner, and a string quartet playing softly in the background. It was perfect on the outside. But behind the scenes, emotions were straining, secrets were on the verge of being revealed, and not everyone was there for the right reasons. Some came seeking love. Others came for vengeance. The bride hurried nervously in her dressing room, fingers twitching around her bouquet. She attempted to convince herself that she was just having ordinary wedding jitters, but something didn't feel right. Her sister's strange conduct, her fiancé's evasiveness, and the hushed chats among family members had all contributed to a gnawing dread she couldn't escape. Her heart wanted to believe in the fairy tale, but her instincts warned her that something else was on its way, something no one could stop once it got started. Meanwhile, the groom stood by the altar with a forced smile and beads of sweat on his forehead. His best man whispered reassurances, but he was clearly struggling to keep it together. The groom's phone had vibrated twice with messages he hadn't dared to read. He was well aware of what they were discussing. The truth had emerged faster than he had imagined. Someone decided today was the day to destroy everything. The ceremony started, and the guests rose to their feet. The bride looked radiant, despite the storm brewing beneath her skin. Her breathing became shallower as she moved closer to the altar. She locked eyes with her groom, hoping to find solace and convince herself that there was still love between them. However, as the officiant approached the section where objections were invited, the doors broke open. Gasps filled the room. A woman stood at the entryway, eyes flaming, clutching her phone like a torch of justice. "You can't marry him," she insisted, her voice shaking but firm. "He has been lying to you, and I have proof." Whispers swept through the crowd like a tidal wave. The bride froze, staring at a woman she dimly recognized as someone from the groom's past. Someone he had promised became irrelevant. But the evidence suggested otherwise. The woman stepped nearer, hitting play on her phone. The groom's voice resonated around the room. A tape of a private conversation filled with confessions, manipulation, and treachery. The bride's knees buckled. The groom attempted to rush to her side, but she held up her hand, stopping him cold. "Don't touch me," she warned, her voice frigid and sharp as glass. The groom opened his mouth to explain and beg, but she turned away, fighting back tears. What followed was a disorienting blur of accusations and realizations. The groom had been living a double life, seducing the woman at the door with vows to leave the bride for her. He never planned to follow through. He felt he could handle everything, play both sides and keep the truth hidden. But someone is always talking. Someone always cracks under the strain of secrets. The bride's family was shocked. Her father appeared prepared to unleash fists. Her mother tried to get her out of the room, but she refused to move. She needed to hear every word, to let the truth penetrate her completely, so she would never forget this moment. Because suddenly everything had changed. However, that was not the only revelation. A second voice rose above the chaos, this time from the groom's mother. She rose and demanded attention, her voice calm but lethal. "There's more you don't know," she continued, gazing at the bride. "And it's about time you did." Everyone turned. The groom turned pale. His mother then revealed a long-held family secret, one that would bring the bride and groom together in unexpected ways. They were linked by blood in a distant but frightening way, the consequence of a long-hidden affair. It was not enough to prevent them from marrying legally, but it was devastating emotionally. The bride stumbled back, broken all over again. Not only had he betrayed her, but their entire relationship had been based on a lie that neither of them fully realized. It was just too much. She ripped off her veil, set aside the bouquet, and marched out with her head held high, her dignity intact but her heart shattered. The guests sat, stunned in shock, as the groom collapsed to his knees, the weight of his actions eventually crushing him. He'd lost her. He'd lost everything. Back in the dressing room, the bride sank into a chair, breath ragged and makeup damaged. Her closest friend knelt alongside her, clutching her hand silently. There are no words that would improve this situation. But one thing was certain. She was not broken. She was angry. Yes, it hurts. Without a doubt, I feel betrayed. But not destroyed. The commotion of the day continued outside. The paparazzi descended on the venue as the story spread to gossip blogs and news outlets. Headlines blared about the wedding from hell. The bride's picture, beautiful and devastated, was everywhere. The groom's reputation, which was already teetering, was now ruined. Business partnerships were dissolved. Friends turned their backs. The reaction was fast and harsh. However, in the peaceful aftermath, the bride began to rediscover her tale. She hid for weeks, sorting through the damage, but she did not wallow. She met with lawyers, made arrangements, and began severing all ties to the man who had betrayed her. She gave back the gifts, sold the outfit, and donated the venue deposit to a women's shelter. Her sadness became her armor. Her suffering became a source of meaning. Eventually, she organized a gathering, not a pity party but a declaration. She summoned the same guests who had witnessed her world crumble, and she stood before them stronger, fiercer, and unapologetic about herself. No more pretending. No more falsehoods. She spoke openly about betrayal, how to survive it, and the importance of walking away from what no longer serves you. What about the groom? He disappeared from public view. Rumors circulated about rehabilitation, leaving the country, and having a mental breakdown. None of this mattered to her. She didn't seek vengeance. She desired freedom. And she received it. The lady who once believed that her wedding day would define her life discovered something more powerful. What happens after? The broken plans and ruined dreams did not destroy her. They revealed her. Sometimes the truth hurts more than the lie. But that anguish marks the start of something real. Something honest. Something earned. And while the scars remain, so does her determination to never accept anything less than what she deserves. Nina had always thought of Curtis as one of her most loyal friends, someone who had seen her through her darkest times without passing judgment. But something had changed in him recently. Nina noticed his demeanor, guardedness, and the way he appeared to consider his remarks. She simply assumed that the shift had nothing to do with her. So when Curtis finally invited her to talk and asked her to meet him in a quiet corner of the Metro Court, she felt a strange twist in her stomach. Something about the tone in his voice told her this wasn't going to be another conversation about life, Sunny, or the mess they were all getting themselves into. Curtis had remained silent at first, sipping his drink and avoiding eye contact. Nina, as usual, attempted to lighten the mood with small talk and a few harmless jabs about the Metro Court staff's most recent gaffes. However, Curtis refused to take the bait. Finally, he looked her in the eyes, and she realized what was coming next had been building for quite some time. He began by claiming he owed her the truth. That word alone knocked the wind out of Nina's lungs. Curtis was nothing if not direct, and if he stated he owed her something, it was not going to be pleasant. She braced herself, fingers clenched around her wine glass, already fearing the consequences. Curtis informed her of what he had discovered, a secret that had a direct impact on her, but had been kept hidden for weeks. He admitted that it was not his responsibility to keep it, but he wanted to protect her. Nina, perplexed and nervous, pressed him to simply say it. That's when he informed her. It had to do with her role in the SEC tip that resulted in Carly and Drew's legal nightmare. A secret Nina thought she had buried, even if it tortured her every day. But the bomb Curtis dropped had nothing to do with what she had done. It was a question of who else knew. It turns out that someone very close to Curtis had known the truth for a while, and had told him. Curtis had chosen not to tell Nina until now, possibly due to fear, hesitation, or misguided loyalty. Nina was floored. Her mind raced as she attempted to absorb the ramifications. Curtis not only knew what she'd done, but he'd decided to remain silent, allowing her to go about Port Charles, believing she'd buried the secret alone. Worse, he'd been watching her struggle to maintain her relationships, while fully aware that the truth was on the verge of unraveling. Curtis attempted to explain himself, insisting that he didn't tell her sooner, because he didn't want to ruin what was left of her life. He said that he had wrestled with the decision for weeks, debating whether to protect her by being honest or sparing her the anguish of another betrayal. However, Nina did not view it as protection. She regarded it as a betrayal in its own way. Curtis, who had stayed by her through her most difficult battles, her custody struggle, her problems with Sonny, her fall from grace in Port Charles, had crossed a boundary she couldn't ignore. He had silently judged her, withholding information that could have influenced how she interacted with Carly, Drew, and even Sonny. Nina found that unforgivable. What hurt the most was not the secret itself. Curtis, her buddy, the man who had always been by her side, had determined that she couldn't be trusted with the truth. He'd made a decision for her, depriving her of the one thing she needed most, autonomy. Nina did not require protection. She needed honesty. She needed allies who believed she could face the consequences of her actions while still surviving. Following that, the conversation became increasingly heated. Curtis tried to apologize, telling her he hadn't intended for it to escalate this far. But Nina wasn't listening. Her voice cracked as she told him that the friendship they had left was now shattered. She was unsure if they could recover from this. She wasn't sure if she wanted to try. Curtis, for his part, did not argue with her on that. Maybe he realized he'd already lost her trust. Maybe he understood that sometimes the most difficult part of being a friend was not knowing when to speak. It was knowing when your silence caused more harm than the truth ever could. After she departed, Curtis sat alone for a long time. He was not proud of what he had accomplished. However, he was unsure whether he would have chosen differently. In his mind, Nina was frail, on the verge of losing everything. He hoped his silence would give her time to rebuild and stay afloat. But he had underestimated her. Nina did not want to be coddled. She wanted to be treated as if she was capable of dealing with the reality, no matter how painful. Meanwhile, Nina strolled into the night, unsure what to do next. Curtis was more than just another person in her life. He was one of the few she could fully trust. And now that trust was lost. She felt adrift again, as if each step she took in Port Charles was a landmine waiting to explode. She had worked so hard to move on, to find a glimmer of redemption, to protect what she had with Sonny and Willow, and the rest of the people she had wronged. But with Curtis' confession, Nina was reminded of how delicate her world was. One secret, one decision, one erroneous purpose, and everything may fall apart. In the days that followed, word of their disagreement crept quietly across Port Charles. People noticed the cold shoulder, the short discussions, and the empty grins. No one knew exactly what had happened between Curtis and Nina, but the tension was palpable. And as they went through the motions, Curtis at the Savoy, Nina at Crimson, their friendship remained in limbo, destroyed by a long-hidden truth. Whether time could mend what had been broken, neither of them knew. But one thing was certain. The bond they once shared would never be the same again.